How's it going, everyone? It's Warren, and it's a new month, which means it's time for a new segment of Theory Thursdays, and it also means that it's time to pick a winner for last month. Last month we had 4 weekly winners for Theory Thursday, so in this video I'll replay all of their theories so you can vote on which one you think should win the overall month and the monthly prize. There will be a poll at the end of this video so you can vote on which one you think should win the overall month, and be sure to stay tuned later on today for February's first episode of Theory Thursday. Okay, so here's a replay of all of last month's weekly winners. Theory number 2 comes from user Gleaming Dust. The theory states that Ant-Man gets sucked into a time vortex. Once he gets out of the time vortex, he goes to the Avengers headquarters and finds out that he's actually in the wrong time. I agree with this. I definitely think that Ant-Man is going to go into a time vortex and come out in the wrong time. Once he gets out and realizes that he's in the wrong time, he goes and finds Hank Pym and Janet Van Dyne to figure out how to travel through time vortexes. Once he figures it out, he goes back to the present time and finds the remaining Avengers. From there, using time travel, the Avengers will go back to the Battle of New York and begin to change the events of the past. And Captain America will come up with a plan to get the Mind Stone from Loki. This theory makes a lot of sense. Ant-Man is stuck in the quantum realm right now. He obviously has to get out somehow, and it could be through a time vortex. After all, they did mention it in the post-credit scene of Ant-Man and the Wasp. And it makes sense to go back to the Battle of New York and get the Mind Stone from Loki. So that's theory number 4. Comes from Austin Green. He's 16 and lives in South Carolina, and this theory has a very interesting take on Avengers Endgame. Austin states that Nebula and Tony are floating through space. And what if, while they're floating through space, they run into Thanos? Thanos is on Titan 2, which probably isn't too far from Titan 1, which is where Tony and Nebula are coming from. So they run into Thanos, but Thanos has already finished his job. He balanced the universe. So he doesn't want to fight, he just wants to be left alone. So he sends them back to Earth using the Space Stone. Once they meet up with the rest of the Avengers, they begin to prepare a plan to go against Thanos. But since the snap, the universe is now vulnerable, and this is where the second threat comes in. The second threat threatens the entire universe, so Thanos goes to the Avengers. The gauntlet is too damaged to undo the snap, but the time stone still works. So Thanos will go back in time with the Avengers to stop himself from doing the snap. We do know that a new threat is coming, and we did see at the end of Infinity War that the gauntlet is damaged. It's also really expected that Thanos will somehow work with the Avengers. So you never know, this could happen. So that's theory number 4. Theory number 3 comes from Samuel, 15 years old from Puerto Rico, and his friend Sebastian. Samuel has a theory on how he thinks Avengers Endgame is going to go down. He says that the movie will start off with Thanos on Titan 2 watching the sunrise on a grateful universe. It'll then cut to the Avengers facility where some of the Avengers such as Rocket and Rhodey will have left to go search for some of the heroes that may have survived the snap. Steve and Natasha are figuring things out while Banner is looking at the missing heroes. We then cut to Ant-Man, who is stuck inside of the quantum realm, who gets out of the quantum realm thanks to the help of one of his aunts. When he gets out, he sees the dust on the floor but ignores it and gets in his van to go search for people. When he's driving, he doesn't see anybody, and when he can't find anybody that he knows, he gets worried and goes to the Avengers headquarters. And that's where we see the scene with him in the Avengers Endgame trailer. They explain to Scott everything that happened, and Scott realizes that the ashes were from Hank, Janet, and Hope. Then he freaks out wondering about his daughter, and he starts asking about all of the other heroes, Spider-Man, Wanda, Bucky, and asks where Tony is. We see Steve thinking about Tony, and it cuts to Tony and Nebula on the Benatar. They've already tracked Earth but don't have enough fuel to get there, and Tony is about to die. Tony finishes his message to Pepper, and Nebula asks about Pepper, and they get to know each other. And then Captain Marvel shows up, and the two of them explain who they are and what exactly happened with Thanos. Then Captain Marvel, being afraid of what happened to Nick Fury, pushes them to Earth to the Avengers facility. The Avengers reunite and Tony reunites with Pepper. And then Captain Marvel starts talking about time travel and how she can do it. Then Scott remembers what Janet said about the time vortexes in the quantum realm. Tony and Scott then work on quantum realm suits to go inside of the quantum realm to collect time loop fragments. They are successful and they end up designing suits to use the time loop fragments to be able to travel through time. They then talk about a plan to go back in time and collect the Infinity Stones, that way the Infinity Stones that Thanos has currently disappear. Then the Avengers break off into separate missions. Ant-Man, Captain America, and Iron Man go back to 2012 and get the Mind Stone from Loki's scepter. In the current time, Natasha sees the news and sees that people are dead in the streets of Japan with arrows in their backs. She knows it's Clint, so she goes to Japan. When she finds him, she says, "This isn't you. I can help you. We're family. Clint finishes the conversation by taking off his mask, turns around and says, "I don't have one." Then they go back to the Avengers HQ. Scott, Steve, and Tony get back, and Tony says he needs to go back to get the Tesseract, and Thor says that he'll go get the Reality Stone. Tony throws on a SHIELD uniform and goes back to 2012 and gets the Tesseract. Thor goes back in time to where he kills Malekith and gets the Reality Stone. But he also sees himself from the past, gives himself a little chuckle, and takes Mjolnir from him. Thor then returns with the Reality Stone, Stormbreaker, and Mjolnir. Thor then remembers when he met Doctor Strange, so he goes back in time to talk to him. Doctor Strange realizes that the fate of the universe depends on him giving the Time Stone to Thor, so he gives it to him. Thor then goes to Nidavellir but doesn't find Eitri, but he does take the Infinity Gauntlet prototype. He comes back and gives it to Tony, and Tony makes a new suit called the Infinity Suit. Natasha and Clint come back, and Clint talks to Captain Marvel about the scrolls. Nebula then says that she can go back in time and get the Power Stone, so she goes back in time and takes it from Gamora and Quill. She gets back and she explains the Soul Stone to the Avengers, and the Avengers decide that they will not sacrifice another life to retrieve it, but they have 5 stones and prepare for battle. They go back in time to where Wanda blows up the Mind Stone, and right when Thanos is about to reverse time, the Avengers show up. Thanos is confused, so he uses the Space Stone to teleport, but Tony uses the Mind Stone to read his mind. So they quickly follow Thanos to his planet. There, Thanos has prepared an army with the Reality Stone and has used the Soul Stone to bring back the Black Order. The Avengers fight, and Captain America ends up using Mjolnir. The Avengers end up defeating Thanos, and they use the stones to undo the snap and destroy the stolen stones. And then Tony and Steve rest watching the sunrise on a grateful universe. So that's how Avengers Endgame could go down from Samuel, and I think there are a lot of elements in this theory that could actually happen in the movie. Specifically, the Avengers going back in time to collect the Infinity Stones and Tony Stark designing an Infinity Suit. So that's theory number 3. Theory number 3 comes from Gotham Ramesh from Melbourne, Australia, with a theory on how the beginning of Avengers Endgame will happen. Gotham says it begins with Thanos on his farm in Titan 2 peacefully and with pride because he achieved his goal of balancing the universe. Little did he think of what the remaining superheroes would do. The remaining Avengers leave Wakanda to the Avengers facility to find out how big of an impact the decimation caused. When they get there, Pepper Potts is already there, waiting to show them a message from Tony. This is the same one he recorded in the Avengers Endgame trailer. Rocket figures out that Tony is on the Benatar and finds a way to track it down. Meanwhile, Captain Marvel returns to Earth and tries to find Fury and goes to the road where Fury activated the pager from the end credit scene of Infinity War. Then she goes to the Hidden Shield facility and finds Klein, who was mentioned in the end credit scenes of Infinity War as well. He takes Captain Marvel to the Avengers facility. There, everybody's busy trying to find a way to get Tony back and trying to find out who else has gone missing. Banner, when he is trying to check the missing people's list, tries to connect with the Hulk and resolve their issues. Thor tries to find Dr. Selvig. When he does find him, he is mortified of what happened, and Thor takes him to the facility and they start discussing what happened. Natasha explains to Captain Marvel about what Thanos did. Meanwhile, Rocket tells Rhodey that he found a way to track down the Benatar. Pepper insists that she wants to go with Rocket, and at that time Rhodey gives her a bracelet that Tony wanted to give her, which is the same bracelet from the first Avengers movie which Tony uses to put on his suit, but this time it's the rescue suit. She puts on the suit, and then her, Rhodey, and Rocket go into space to get Tony and Nebula, and Captain Marvel joins as well. In the meantime, Cap is trying to find clues from SHIELD files and archive videos to find more agents to get ready for a war, and then he comes across a video of Ant-Man and shows it to Thor, Banner, and Selvig to get answers. When Tony gets back, he looks quite old due to starvation, and he finds out that time travel is possible thanks to Ant-Man's video. He then tells Banner about Barf Tech, and they try to find a way to reach Ant-Man. Tony then asks Banner to contact Wong and asks Wong to find a way to communicate with Doctor Strange to find out the outcome of what they're about to do. Wong ultimately says no because having that knowledge of the future is too dangerous. And that does it for Gotham's theory. There is definitely a lot from this theory that could happen in Avengers Endgame. A couple things that Gotham mentioned that not a lot of people really think about are Selvig and Klein. We actually know that Selvig survived the snap. We know this from the book Thanos Titan Consumed, which ties directly into the MCU. So he'll probably have a role in Avengers Endgame. Klein is also speculated to have a pretty decent role. He's mentioned in the post-credit scene for Avengers Infinity War and mentioned in the Captain Marvel Prelude comic. And I definitely think that he's going to be the one to introduce Captain Marvel to the rest of the Avengers. And I do think that in some way Wong will figure out how to communicate with Doctor Strange. So that does it for theory number 3 on... Okay, that's it for last month's weekly winners. Be sure to vote on which one you think should win the overall month and monthly prize. And again, be sure to tune in later on today for this month's first episode of Theory Thursday. As always, thank you all so much for watching. Woof woof.